Hello Year 6, Miss Kamal here. Welcome to today's lesson, Lesson 4 of Science. In our unit of Evolution and Inheritance, today's lesson we will be looking at the inquiry question, who developed theories of evolution? Let's take a look at our success criteria. So, first of all, we're going to name people who were influential in the theory of evolution. Then we're going to discuss evidence which supports Darwin's theory of evolution. Thirdly, and to support our working scientifically, we're going to identify scientific evidence that has been used to support or refute ideas or arguments. Our key words today are over here, and they are theory, evolved, adaptation, habitat, environment, paleontologist, diversified. I'd like you to pause the video and make a note of these key words. That will go towards your mini glossary for our science topic of evolution and inheritance. Let's have a look at our knowing more, remembering more. I've created a 2 quiz for you on Purple Mash for you to fill out your answers. Pause the video now, have a look and see if you can answer some of them already. At the end of the lesson today, you'll go on to Purple Mash and complete the answers and hand them in to me so I can see how well you've done. Who are the scientists that were influential in the theory of evolution? Many scientists have provided evidence that different species evolved over time from a common ancestor, so our ancestor was shared. In Lesson 1, we recap learning from Year 3 about how fossils form. A scientist who studies fossils is called a paleontologist. A very famous paleontologist, Mary Anning, is recognised as a pioneer in the field of paleontology and is celebrated as the greatest fossil hunter of all time. I have some words here underlined. Can you find out what they mean? Get a dictionary or go online and find out what each of the words means and add them to our glossary. Who was Mary Anning? Mary Anning was born in the seaside town of Lyme Regis, Dorset in 1799. Mary's father boosted the family's earnings by looking for fossils, known as curiosities, at the beach and selling them to holiday makers. In 1811, when Mary was 12, they uncovered a strange 5.2 metre long skeleton. At the time, people believed that any unrecognisable creatures must have travelled from far-off lands. Eventually, they realised it was an ancient species, and it was named Ichthyosaurus, meaning fish lizard. Who was Mary Anning? In 1823, Mary made another important discovery. The first ever plesiosaur skeleton. This long-necked sea creature looks so odd that many people thought it was fake at first. Mary made many other exciting discoveries, such as the petrodactyl and coprolite fossilised poo, which helped her work out what dinosaurs ate. Having taught herself geology, anatomy and scientific illustration, Mary was so highly skilled that she took other scientists fossil hunting and discussed ideas and theories with them. Mary died in 1847. Although she was well known for her discoveries, Mary wasn't taken seriously as a scientist in her lifetime because of her gender and background. How much can you remember? Have a look at these questions, pause the video and write down what you think. Here's something else for you to do. Have a look at these pictures. Can you match the fossil, the name and the date? Have a go. Were you correct? Check the answers here. So now for your task. On your sheet, I want you to answer the following questions. When and where was Mary Anning born? What discoveries did she make in 1811 and 1823? Can you remember any others? And why was she highly skilled? Despite this, why wasn't she respected in the scientific world? Here is some key vocabulary to help you. Another really famous person in science is a man called Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin was born on the 12th of February 1809 in Shrewsbury, England, to a really rich family with lots of opportunities. He made one of the most important scientific discoveries after embarking on a journey on the HMS Beagle in 1831. He found the Galapagos Islands. Here you can see them on the map. This is where he started off, and he headed through the Atlantic, past North Africa, all the way down here. What's this country called? That's right, South America. Went all the way around and up, and that's where he found all these islands here, called the Galapagos Islands. So whilst he was on the Galapagos Islands, Darwin discovered a lot of new plants and animals that no one had ever seen before. He was especially interested in the species of bird called a finch. He discovered that each island had a different species of finch, with a different shaped beak adapted to the food source on the island. Look at this guy's beak here. It's very different to this one here, for example. Pause the video. Why do you think these birds' beaks are so different? Which beak would be best at cracking open nuts, catching insects? Why? Now, number 1 is a large ground finch. Number 2 is a medium ground finch. Number 3 is a small tree finch. And number 4 is a green warbler finch. Which do you think are best at cracking open nuts, catching insects? For both choices, I'd like you to think about and make a note as to why this may be. Pause the video and have a go. Here are the answers. Did you get them all right? Why do you think the green warbler finch is really good at catching insects with its beak? And why do you think the large ground finch is really good at cracking open nuts with its beak? Pause for thought. Charles Darwin observed that the shape of a bird's beak was suited to what a bird ate. So the cactus finch, for example, wouldn't want to hurt itself as it fed on the cactus plant, so its beak has evolved to be really thin and pointy and long. Look at the woodpecker finch. What does the woodpecker finch have in his mouth? Why do you think this has taken place? Let's find out more. Here is a clip of a woodpecker finch. It's looking for something. A stick. The woodpecker finch is one of the only bird species that uses tools to help it find food. Using sticks, it digs into trees in search of tasty larvae and insects. So at first, Charles Darwin thought these birds were an unrelated species because of their beaks being so different. But then he realised that they were all finches. He concluded that they had evolved to adapt to local food supplies on the different islands. On one of the Galapagos Islands, there would have been lots of different finches with lots of different beaks. It's time to figure out which beak is best suited to the food supply on the island. Let's investigate. You can take part 2 by looking at the following list, pause the video and see if you can get them all together. What do you predict? Which utensil will be best at picking up seeds? Why? I want you to complete a prediction for me now. You can use these sentence starters to help you. Make sure that you give me reasoning behind your choice. Tell me why you predict a certain utensil will be best for picking up seeds. Once you've completed this, we're going to watch Miss Bryant carry out the experiment on the next slide. So pause the video, write out your prediction, and then unpause and we can watch Miss Bryant carry out the experiment. Here's a results table. Before we move on to watch Miss Bryant carry out the investigation, I'd like you to draw it up nice and neatly in your book. Please use a pencil and ruler. Now Miss Bryant will mention that she would like you to make a note of the data that she gives you in the investigation. I would prefer you to carry out your own investigation after seeing how it's done, and then put your own data in your own results table. We'll talk about the average after we watch Miss Bryant carry out the investigation. Pause the video and start drawing up your results table.
Hello everyone. Today we are going to be investigating further into Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. He discovered when on the Galapagos Islands that the finches on different islands had different shapes, beaks, depending on the food source available on their specific island. This linked into his theory about evolution and survival of the fittest. Today we're going to investigate this theory by using some rice grains instead of seeds, and we are going to use 2 different bird beaks, one as tweezers and one as chopsticks. We're going to have to pick up a grain of rice and place it in the mouth dish. We're going to have to see how many each instrument can pick up in 30 seconds. So I'm going to start with the tweezers. Have you made your prediction? Which one do you think I will be able to pick up more rice or seeds in 30 seconds? Are you ready to find out? I'm only allowed to pick up 1 grain of rice at a time. Oh, it's quite challenging. How am I doing? How many seconds have I got left? And stop. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 rice grains. Mark that in your table of results. Now, for us to be able to make our results more reliable, I need to repeat this experiment. So I'm going to reset my stopwatch, get myself ready, and see whether I can do any better. Are you ready? Okay, let's see this time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 this time. Okay, I'm going to reset my stopwatch, and this time I'm going to have a go with the chopsticks. How do you think I will do? Do you think my bird beak is better adapted to the rice grains, or do you think it's going to be worse? Let's have a look. The concentration on my face, if you could see it. This is really challenging. 1. Okay, so quick count, 2. So again, let's do it again to make my results more reliable. I think if I had these beaks, I might go quite hungry if I was a bird. Can I do any better this time? What do you think? Oh dear, well that time I only got 1. So, I think we have some very clear results there. Which beak was better adapted to the rice grains as seeds? Which bird would go hungry and therefore eventually die off? Write your conclusion on your sheet.
Well done for carrying out your own investigation. You should have data in each of these boxes on your table. These boxes here, however, should be blank. This is our average. This is why we carry out the investigation 3 times for each utensil. So, can we remember how to calculate the average of 3 numbers? That's right, we add each number together for each beak. Once we add these numbers together, for tweezers for example, we then divide that total by 3. That then becomes our average or mean value. We do the same for chopsticks, the other beak. We add this value, this value, this value together, and then we divide it by 3, and the answer we pop into this box here for our average. Have a go. So, what did you find out? Let's collate the results. If you were a bird that mainly ate seeds, would it be more useful to have a long beak, like the chopsticks, or a small beak, like the tweezers? We need to think now, which tool was the best for picking up the seeds? Have a chat with your grown-up. So, which was best at picking up seeds? What evidence does this provide for Charles Darwin's theory? I want you now to create your own conclusion on your sheet. You could use these starter sentences here. I conclude that, I think this because. Always show me reasoning for the choice that you've made. So now it's time for you to have a little discussion with your grown-up. What do you conclude? What if your beak was like the chopsticks? Would you thrive? What would happen to the numbers of your species? What might need to happen? Have a chat with your grown-up. This is a prime example of survival of the fittest. The finches' beaks have evolved and adapted over time in order for them to survive. The survivors were able to pass on their genetic information, in this case their different shaped beak, to the next generation of offspring. They pass the strong characteristics which help them to survive onto their offspring, so gradually the species change over time. This is natural selection. So Darwin completed his voyage on a ship called HMS Beagle in 1836 and returned to England. For over 20 years, Darwin continued to work on his theory of evolution, and he tried to solve the questions about how species evolve. He concluded that evolution occurred by the process of natural selection. Finally, in 1859, Darwin published his book called On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Darwin died on the 19th of April 1882, and he was buried in Westminster Abbey. How was Darwin's reputation after he died different to Mary Anning? How do you know? Pause the video and have a think. Who was Charles Darwin? Under your conclusion, explain who Charles Darwin was and what he discovered. You can use this key vocabulary over here to help you, and also make sure that you pause the video and rewind it if you need to gain some more information. I want you to consider as well, what evidence do you think there is to support Darwin's theory of evolution, and what evidence is there to refute it, to go against it? So to support it, for example, you'd think about evidence that identified how animals and plants are adapted to suit their environment in different ways. So maybe you could think about referring to our peppered moth story from last lesson. And to refute it, to go against Charles Darwin's theory, a prime example would be that creationists believe that God created the world and all the animals and plants in it. And so they didn't take Charles Darwin's theory that species evolve by natural selection seriously. Now, you must remember that Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is that, a theory. It might be very popular, but it is just a theory, and it doesn't mean that it is 100% right. So now have a go at writing up about Charles Darwin on your sheet. Well done! You've looked at who developed ideas on evolution. You named people who were influential in the theory of evolution. You've discussed evidence which supports Darwin's theory of evolution. And to support our working scientifically, you've identified scientific evidence that has been used to support or refute ideas or arguments. Before we finish our lesson today, let's review the knowledge. Have a look at the true or false questions below. Pause the video and take some time to answer them. Let's go through the answers together. Number 1, animals and plants are adapted to suit their environment in different ways, and adaptation may lead to evolution. This is true. This is what we've seen in Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Number 2, Mary Anning discovered the first intact plesiosaur skeleton. This is true. Can you remember how long it was? That's right, 5.2 meters. Number 3, Charles Darwin was a physicist. Nope, he wasn't a physicist, he was a naturalist and a paleontologist. Number 4, creationists believe that God created the world and all the animals and plants in it. This is true, and they strongly refute Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. So, that's all for today. Well done if you got all the answers correct. Give yourself a pat on the back. I'd like you to go over your work now to ensure that you've got everything correct, and you can rewind this video if you need to. Don't forget to complete your to-dos on Purple Mash, especially the Know More Remembering More from this lesson. Make sure you hand it in to me so I can see how well you've done.